What's up guys, my name is Matthew and today I'm recommending 10 of my favorite thrillers. Alright, so I recently released a video where I talked about thrillers with really good plot twists. About a year ago I released a video about my favorite thrillers. I think it's time to update this list and provide you guys with some more of my favorite thrillers that I've read in the past year. Some of these thrillers you will probably know, especially if you're like regularly on BookTube and watching BookTube videos. Some of these are a little bit obscure and you might not have heard of. I'm gonna have timestamps down below so you can like break down which books you wanna like review and hear me talk about. Side note, I hate when people like make these lists and they don't put bookmarks. If you don't have a YouTube account or like make YouTube videos, it is so easy to put bookmarks and I could not like wrap my mind around why these people were not putting bookmarks. And I think I figured it out. It's because they want you to stay on their video longer. So if you don't have bookmarks, you have to skim through the whole, you have to like watch the whole thing. And if people stay on your videos longer, it gets more views. I'm convinced that's why, but I'm a type A. I don't like my time wasted, get to the point. So we're having bookmarks. I don't care if that makes this video do poorly. Anyway, to the books. Okay, the first book I'm gonna recommend to you guys, I finished 2 days ago and it was one of the best thrillers I've read in probably the last year. I read it in like 2 sittings. It is Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. And why have you guys been letting me sleep on this author? Because this book was phenomenal. It was so twisted, so shocking. I was so like deeply invested in the characters. And I can't believe people have not like made me read this sooner. That's a lie. People have been commenting, telling me to read this book. I just haven't been listening. Anyway, what is this book about? This book is about a girl named Angela who was disappeared 14 years previously. And no one knew what happened to this girl named Angela. She had a friend named Gio and a friend named Kaiser. And 14 years in the future, we realized that Angela was a victim of this guy named, I already forget his name, I read this book 2 days ago, Calvin James, who was a serial killer in Seattle, in this fictional Seattle area. And it turns out that Calvin James murdered Angela. We're 14 years in the future, and it turns out that, this is all information you know in the first chapter. Turns out that Calvin James was dating this girl named Gio, who was Angela's best friend, at the time that Angela was murdered. The book opens up in this first chapter and you're in a courtroom and Gio is testifying that, Gio is short for Georgina. Gio is testifying that she knew that Calvin killed her and she's been keeping the secret for 14 years. So Georgina gets put in prison for 5 years and that's how the book starts. And from the first chapter, the writing, I was gripped. Like I knew within the first like paragraph, I was like, oh, this book's gonna be good. And I realized that I like thrillers that are written from third-person point of view because it's a great literary technique for the author to hide plot points because there's so much in this book that if it was written from the first person, it wouldn't work because if we were in the protagonist's mind, Georgina's mind, she would have thought about things that were twists later on in the book. So I think when authors are writing thrillers from the third person, it is such a stronger thriller. And I've realized some of my favorite thriller authors do write from the third person. Someone who comes to mind really quick is Karin. We have a few books from her on this list. But that's just a side note that I think thrillers written from third person are usually stronger, have better twists, and are just like better like, quality thrillers. Fight me on that in the comments. I'm okay with that. That's just my personal preference. So this book is a ride. It is so fucked up. I mean, we're dealing with some really, really gruesome topics. Just stuff that stands out is like sexual assault, rape. There's this like prison rape that will stay with me for the rest of my life. That's how like awful and cringe and like sent me like wanting to like curl into a ball. If you've read this book, I don't care if you've read this book 10 years ago, you know exactly what I'm talking about because it was so nasty. And there is a scene at the very end of the book, which is another scene of sexual violence. I'm not gonna tell you what that's about because it's a huge spoiler. It makes you wanna like just cringe inside because it's so nasty and awful. But that's just a trigger warning that is very gruesome, very dark, but some of my favorite thrillers are dark. What does that say about me? I don't know. This book, I don't know why we all haven't been reading it, or maybe you guys all have read it and I'm just late to the party. Pick this book up. It is phenomenal, well written. I actually have 2 books by Jennifer Hillier on hold at my library that I'm going to pick up after I film this because I am just like so excited that I found a new favorite thriller author. As I was just speaking about Karin, I should do the 2 Karin books that I'm gonna recommend to you guys. The first one is Pretty Girls by Karin. This is probably my favorite thriller from Karin that I've read so far. I've read about like 6 of her books since January because I'm like, she's one of my new favorite thriller authors and I'm sure most of you have read this book. If you haven't, I promise it is fantastic. I just double checked, it is written from third person, and I'm telling you, thrillers written from third person are just stronger. This book is just as dark as Jar of Hearts. Like, it is dealing with some really dark, nasty, awful topics. And if you are someone who gets triggered by topics easily, or just you don't want to read about atrocious, tragic, terrible things, I would not recommend Karin Slaughter in general. But if you do have a twisted mind and you want a book that you're gonna feel so awful, but you can't look away like a car wreck, Karin Slaughter is the way to go, because she knows how to grip you and make you not be able to stop reading her books. So I don't know, it's like a drug. This book is about two sisters. A lot of her books are about sisters, Claire and Lydia. And Claire and Lydia had a sister named Julia, and Claire and Lydia have not spoken since their sister Julia went missing years previous. Claire is married to this rich, she's very upper class, and Lydia is more dating an ex-con, much more lower class, and just they're living completely different lives, and they haven't spoken since their other sister disappeared. And I just read the inside of the flap to see what they tell you going in. That's all I want to tell you, and I just need you to trust me if you haven't read this book, because I almost spoiled something that happens within the first 2 to 3 chapters that I was just going to say because I didn't know if it told you, but they don't tell you. And I think if you don't know it going in, you will be so shocked. So just where is this book going? I'm thinking back on what this book is about, and it is so fucked up. It is so messed up. It will make you angry, but at the same time, you won't be able to stop reading it because it's so good. If you're like me and you keep hearing people talk about Karin Slaughter and you haven't jumped on the Karin Slaughter train, I definitely recommend you maybe not start with Pretty Girls, because Pretty Girls is my favorite, so maybe start with a different one. But I think if you like thrillers, you will like Pretty Girls because it is phenomenal. So the second Karin Slaughter book that I want to recommend to you is one of her more recent books, and it is False Witness. This is about a girl named Lee who is a lawyer in Atlanta. Almost all of Karin Slaughter's books take place in Atlanta, I've figured out. And Lee is a up-and-coming lawyer. She works at this very prominent law firm. And one night she's at her daughter Maddie's play, and she gets a call from the big partner in her law firm saying, hey, there's this dude here and he wants you to represent him. He's been accused of multiple rapes. And Lee is just like, I'm a civil defense lawyer. Why do you want me to represent you? Who are you? And the book kind of flashes back to her past and how Lee's past is being brought in and how the past is connected to this guy. This is also a book about sisters. Karin Slaughter writes sisters so well. Lee has this little sister named Callie who is kind of a drug addict and just completely different from, that's the same theme from both books. One sister who is very prestigious and one sister who's just kind of meh. Anyway, they don't really talk much, but Lee realizes okay, I've just been put on this case and this is really going into our past. When me and my sister Callie were young, we went through some pretty shitty things. And when I was talking about this book and how messed up it is, this book is just as messed up. I will never forget, there is a twist in the first, I think it's 20 to 23 pages, where you're going to be reading it and you're going to be like, oh, this feels wrong. And then the twist will come at page 20 and you will be like, what the fuck? And it just goes creepy downhill from there. Trust me, it's a wild ride. Easy 5-star for me. If you don't like, books that are just awful and just really tragic, terrible topics, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you are a thriller reader and you're watching this video, you probably are looking for compelling thrillers, and I definitely recommend False Witness if you have not read this by Karin Slaughter. This next book I wanted to tell you about, I just read it this month. I haven't even done a wrap-up on this book, so this book has never been talked about on my channel, but I loved it so much, I devoured it. I've had a really good reading month, so stick around for my wrap-up that should come out next week. But The Boys Club by Katz. This book, I don't know what I was expecting going in, but I loved it. And I can't decide if I loved it because it's about a young lawyer and I am a young lawyer, or just it's a really good book. I've talked to some bookish friends who've also read this book who aren't lawyers and they loved it. So I think in general, it's a great book. And I think it's a thriller. This is what I'm struggling with because it's more of a contemporary, but there are some really thrilling or just shocking things that happen in this book that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Some twists and just you're rooting for the main character, and there's some really evil people in this book. What is this book about? This book is about a girl named Alex who is a Harvard Law School graduate. She's your typical type A, high-strung lawyer, and she's starting in big law. I loved it because I just thought the way that this author talked about law firms and culture at law firms and the politics of law firms was so on point. Like, I was just like underlining, like, oh my God, this is so true. I read the little like about me, and it said that this is a pseudonym for a Columbia Law School graduate, and she is she recovered from one large law firm, and now she's employed at another large law firm. So she's actually a lawyer, and it shows in her books because it is so well done. Anyway, this girl Alex, I'm like really excited about this book because I absolutely loved it. This girl Alex starts at a huge law firm, and she just gets sucked in, and she's trying to like compete with all the new other lawyers, and there's backstabbing, and all the partners of this firm are kind of shady, and you have to go out with the clients, and you have to make the money. And I'm probably doing a terrible job of describing this book, and you're probably sitting there like, Matthew, I would rather watch paint dry than read about culture at a law firm. And that's a fair point. But I'm just letting you know that this is the best book that I've read set in a law firm. This author does, like, all the things a baby lawyer thinks about. This author does a great job of just like capturing all that in a character. And I just loved it. Yeah, I'm getting all my law school friends to read it because it was just so well done. But yes, The Boys Club by Katz. Definitely read this one. If you are new to my channel, one of my favorite tropes in a thriller book is the trope of a group of friends who experience something really tragic in the past, and we're getting alternating chapters of them in the present, and then night or like the time and the group of friends past where this tragic thing happened. And I'm going to recommend Friends Like These by Kimberly McCreight because this follows that trope. And this is about a group of college friends who one night they were all together and experienced something really tragic. And this has kind of stayed with the group of friends going forward, for the next 5 to 10 years. I don't remember how much time had passed. And all of these friends are getting back together at this glamorous camp in upstate New York for an intervention for one of their friends, because one of their friends is a drug addict, and alcoholic, and they're trying to get him into rehab. So they're all coming to this like really expensive camp, and the thing that happened 10 years ago is surfacing while all the friends come together. What really happened 10 years ago? That's my favorite part of this trope. It's like you think you know what happened 10 years ago, but then you figure out like, oh, what happened 10 years ago is not really what happened. And the truth comes to light, and everyone's just like, fuck, who can we trust? Lies, betrayal, and murder. So yes, if you're like me and you love that trope, and you just love reading about friends who just were really bad and then they've done just shitty things and lie, and yeah, I recommend Friends Like These by Kimberly McCreight. On that same line of books that follow something that happened in the past, and that thing happening in the past is coming to light in the present, I'm going to recommend His and Hers by Feeney. This is also a book I've recently read, and we're following two perspectives from him and her. And one of the perspectives is Anna Andrews, who is a BBC reporter, and the other perspective is Chief Inspector Jack Harper. A body is discovered in like this English, not in London. I'm so American. This is why the world hates Americans. Anyway, this book is not set in a big city. It is set in a rural city. Is that okay? And this body comes up, and the two we're going back and forth between these two characters' perspectives, and we're trying to figure out how these two characters know the victim, what's going on, what happened in the past, is a serial killer on the loose. All of those things are being put into play. I will say the first 100 pages of this book I had trouble getting into because I feel like it read completely different from the last 200 pages. Like I almost feel like this was two different books like pasted together. But I still liked it. I'm glad I stuck around because after 100, what happened with this group of friends 10 to 15 years previous is at play, present day, with our two characters. I will say the ending is shocking, a little silly, but I still loved it. It's very fun, very campy. I keep saying the word campy in my vlogs. I don't even know if I know what that word means. I definitely recommend His and Hers by Feeney if you're looking for another thriller with that same idea of friends and stuff happened in the past that's surfacing in the present, and who's lying and who's telling the truth. Oh my God, I don't think I've talked this much in such a long time, and I'm exhausted, but we will persevere. All right, the next book that I'm going to recommend is What Lies Between Us by, can you read? What Lies Between Us by John Marrs. And John Marrs, I've read a few of his books, and what he is known for is writing like quick chapters, and each chapter he leaves you with like a little bit of a cliffhanger, so you have to keep turning the pages. So you read a John Marrs book faster than you read other authors' books because he's really good at keeping you invested and turning the pages. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm going to read the back to you for this one. They say every house has its secrets, and the house that Maggie and Nina have shared for so long is no different. Every other night, Maggie and Nina have dinner together. When they are finished, Nina helps Maggie back to her room in the attic and into the heavy chain that keeps her there. Because Maggie has done things to Nina that can't ever be forgiven, and now she is paying the price. So yes, this is a book about a mom and a daughter, and the daughter has her mom chained up in the attic. And the first, you're like, why does this daughter have her mom chained up in her attic? A lot of people in the town think the mom went away, so no one's really suspicious, and she's like trying to like get out, and she thinks her daughter's like keeping her here as a prisoner, because she is keeping her here as a prisoner. There's so many twists in the end, like what really happened? Who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? Why is this mom chained up in her daughter's attic? It is so fun. It's one of those books that I read super fast. I read this so long ago, but I just remember like really enjoying it and really enjoying John Marrs in general. So if you are looking for more thrillers, I would recommend John Marrs because they're very, very easy to digest. Interesting word choice. All right, so another pet peeve is when the book that you're trying to explain does not have the blurb on the back, so I don't know what's a fucking spoiler and what you're supposed to know going in. So this will be very vague. Ruth Ware, Turn of the Key. This was really popular on BookTube last year, so you might have already read this book or seen it in like videos from the past. But I do think this is a very good book, and I think it's one of Ruth Ware's best. I don't love all of Ruth Ware's books. Some of them I find kind of boring, but this one is very good. Let's describe it. It is about this woman who takes a nannying job at this like smart house. And when she gets there, I'm being honest with you, I forgot a lot that happens. Like I know the twist, and I remember enjoying reading this book, but like how to explain this to you other than nanny goes to a smart house and weird shit starts happening? That's about all I'm gonna tell you. I will say I have read a lot of books with the nanny trope and like the demon children. I'm so over it. I think I read this one and this is my favorite so far. And so like now every time I read a book about a nanny, I'm just like, oh, I don't wanna read this. I personally like to know if a book is supernatural before going in. If you don't like knowing if a book is supernatural or if there's a logical twist, skip 10 seconds, spoiler, whatever. This book is not supernatural. There is a logical explanation for everything. Okay, no spoilers. And yeah, it's a really good book. You know, if you're looking for that nanny and what's up with the kids, what's up with the creepy husband, those kind of vibes, I would definitely recommend The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. Just read the blurb for this book because I was like, how can I explain this without spoiling anything? And the blurb does such a good job at leading you astray so that when the twist comes, you are shocked. So I'm gonna try my best to do the same. This is Goodnight Beautiful. It was a book of the month back in book of the month used to tell you what month they were book of the month. Anyway, back when, I don't know, last year. And this is about a therapist who is, let me start over. Ooh, scared of this, spoil it. Okay, so I'm just gonna read the blurb because I'm so scared. Newlyweds Sam Stutler and Annie Potter they moved to New York, and Sam is a therapist and there's a vent in Sam's office. So everything that I'm doing, I'm gonna explain it like how I wanna explain it. And the blurb did such a better job, and I'm like kind of lying to you, but like that's fun in thrillers, right? Okay, so this book is about a guy named something and a girl named something, and the guy is a therapist, and he's a therapy practice at his house, and patients come to his house, and he handles them at his house. Annie, I just remembered her name, his wife, is upstairs, and she can kind of listen down into what is going on during her husband's therapy sessions. So she's getting to hear all of the crazy gossip in the town. So you're reading this book, and about halfway through, there's a major twist because the blurb tricks you. I'm tricking you. Everyone's tricking you. Don't trust anyone. And it is a fun twist. This is a playing on a very popular Stephen King book. I'm not going to tell you the very popular Stephen King book because I don't want to spoil anything, but I would say this is a retelling of a very popular Stephen King book. I feel like I'm talking in circles and I'm being like really vague, and I mean maybe the twist isn't that exciting. All I'm saying is I fell for the twist, and I remember being like having to like reread a chapter because something happens and I'm like, wait, I'm confused, and I had to reread a chapter and I was like, oh shit. So it is fun, it is good. For the twist alone, they did a good job at tricking me, and I really enjoyed it. So read the blurb, see if you can figure out the twist. I probably spoiled it in my explanation. I did my best. The last book, this was one of my first book of the months, I think July 2020. And yeah, I'm pretty sure if not the first, it was like one of the first books that I got from Book of the Month. And it is The Shadows. This book, what I remember the most is the lucid dreaming. If you have any fascination with lucid dreaming, or if you've ever lucid dreamed, or maybe you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's very fascinating. It's where you can kind of like, you're dreaming, but you know you're dreaming, and you can kind of like act out things in your dream. And that's a very prevalent topic in this book. This book is about a guy named Charlie who was 25 years ago, committed a shocking murder. And this guy named Paul Adams, his friend, was the one who got murdered. And he's coming back to the town because his mom has dementia and he's taking care of his mom. And there starts to be this copycat where what was happening in the past seems to be happening again. What I liked about this book is that there's two timelines. You do get to learn about 25 years in the past, and the kid, Charlie, he is so ominous, and it is so dark and creepy because you can just tell he's like one of those kids that are just like really messed up, and he like gets them all to lucid dream and like do shit. I don't know. It's like it's really weird, but very interesting. And there is a twist in this book that it's one of those things where you make an assumption. Don't be stupid. Don't make an assumption, because they set you up to make an assumption, and then something happens and you're like, oh, I assumed this, but I don't know why I assumed that. And then when the twist comes, you're like, oh shit, I'm just an idiot. And yeah, so it did a good job at this. There is a whodunit aspect of this book that was, in my opinion, really silly and just kind of stupid and rolled your eyes. And I remember talking about it. I don't know if I talked about it. Like, I don't know if I had videos at this time, but I remember like being like, okay, the book was really good, but the whodunit was really bad. But there is another twist that I really enjoyed. The lucid dreaming. It's a very like dark atmosphere. I feel like this book would be good to read during the fall. I know it's May right now, but whatever, read it anytime. But it's a very like October vibes. Yeah, I don't know why I'm thinking that, but I just remember it being very dark. But yeah, very exciting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have lost my voice because I don't speak this much. I literally on my computer all day. This is 10 of my favorite thrillers. Some of these you've probably heard on my channel, some of them you haven't. Let me know below if you've read any of these. If you disagree, agree with me, and I will see you guys in another video soon. Fuck.